am Carol Leatham, and you're listening to the Caretakers Journey podcast. This is the introduction episode of the Caretakers Journey podcast, and I will be your host every week for meaningful conversations about what the Caretakers Journey looks like. Did you know that there are over 53 million unpaid caretakers in the U.S., and over 75% of them are women? I am one of those 53 million. I care for my husband who struggles with mental illness and physical illness. I also help my 4 siblings care for our mom who's in assisted living. I am building a community to bring awareness, help, hope, encouragement, and healing to caretakers everywhere. Not currently a caretaker? Well, I'm sure you know one, and they need your encouragement and support. Also, statistics show that 1 in 5 people will become a caretaker in their adult life. So listening in could be preparation for your future in caretaking circumstances. Let's dive in and having meaningful conversation about what the caretaker's journey looks like. First off, let's define what is a caretaker. Well, it's defined as someone who provides care for someone else. Now, this is a pretty vague definition. A caretaker can be a wife or a husband caring for their spouse, an adult child caring for their aging parent, a mom of a child who has mental impairments or mental illness. And as the number of people struggling with mental illness rises, so does the number of caretakers. Caretakers pour so much time and energy and emotion into supporting the person that they're caring for, they often forget to take care of themselves. We need to build a solid foundation spiritually, and then we need to strengthen 3 other areas in our lives: physical, emotional, and mental. If we ignore these areas, we could be heading for problems in our own health. Did you know that Caretakers Burnout is now listed as a medical illness? Medical journals are now saying that caretakers burnout is a condition that is on the rise. So what is caretakers burnout? Well, it's a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. This happens while you're caring for someone else. Does that sound familiar? Well, I've been there, and if you have any of these feelings, you might be on the road to caretakers burnout. It's not taken lightly by psychologists. They define it as a debilitating psychological condition that's brought on by unrelieved stress. It should not be taken lightly by you or me. By the time most of us as caretakers suspect that we're having burnout, we're already suffering from a myriad of different symptoms. So can it be avoided? And how can we avoid it? Well, I have learned that we must take care of ourselves or we can't take care of anyone else. I've also learned that it's easy to trust God when life is going smooth, but can we trust Him when life is chaotic and messy? Well, my answer to both of those questions is yes, absolutely yes. I was reading this morning in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 2, and in the Message it says, "The act of faith is what distinguished our ancestors and set them above the crowd." Let's think about this for a minute. The act of faith, their behavior, how they lived out their faith. This is what distinguished them and set them apart, even when their life was messy. What I discovered is that I had to be willing to let go of the life that I had planned so that I could have the life that was waiting for me. And part of that life is the role of the caretaker. So defining where my strength comes from, it has to start with the spiritual. Who is my creator? Where does my faith in that creator stand? I have to understand what I'm dealing with in the aspect of caring for my loved one. What is the mental illness he's dealing with? What is the physical struggles that he's having? I have to ask the right questions. And then I have to realize that trusting God doesn't just happen. It's something I have to choose to keep doing over and over and over again. So for a minute, let's go back to the definition of caretaker's burnout. A state of mental, emotional, and physical exhaustion that happens while we're taking care of someone else. What did I just talk about? The core areas that we need to strengthen: the mental, the emotional, the physical areas of our life. Life as a caretaker can be hard, and we have to strengthen these 4 areas. So, what does that look like? Well, the spiritual aspect is asking questions like, what is our foundation? Where does our strength come from? Where is God in this journey? The mental component is, what do I do when my thoughts turn dark and I say to myself, I didn't sign up for this? I don't know what to do. I'm terrified. It's time for me to make a mental adjustment. The physical aspect, why is it important for us to rest, to exercise, to eat right, to take a break? Why do we as caretakers need to focus on that? And then the emotional area. How can we lean into the many different emotions that we feel daily as a caretaker and not be overwhelmed? Can we find true joy in the midst of this painful circumstance? Yes. I like to say that I've decided to live my life #going rogue. If you look up the word rogue, it's to behave in a way that is not normal or expected. So I want to go rogue. I want to behave in a way that people don't expect. And I want to realize that our God, my God, uses everything. So if we go back to Acts 11:2, the act of their faith, that means that they were behaving in a stated way or they were doing something for a particular purpose. That's what I want to do. I want to say that my life might look like it's falling apart, but it's really falling into His plan. I want the chaos of my life to point people to Jesus. Every week, I'm going to bring to the community a different topic and some speakers who can help us navigate our world as caretakers. When I was praying about starting this community, I began to look for the one everywhere I went. So I would pray before I would go to speak. I would pray before I would go into a group of people. God, please show me that one. And what I discovered is that there's more than one out there. I was speaking a few weeks ago in Tampa, and I asked before I started to speak, how many of you in this room are caretakers? And half the room stood up. Then I asked, how many of you have been caretakers in the past? And another half of the room that was sitting stood up. So now 3/4 of the room is standing. That means that 3/4 of this room had either been a caretaker or were currently a caretaker. They're everywhere. And I began to pray that day as I was getting ready to speak, because I just really felt that there was one person out there that needed to hear the message of hope that a caretaker can have when they're feeling the pressure of the responsibility that they have for their loved one. I began to speak and I'd look around the room, and sometimes I can tell by making eye contact, and you can see sometimes the pressure of the stress of the caretaking journey on the faces of the people that have identified themselves as caretakers. That day, I didn't see anyone. That day, I didn't make eye contact with anyone. And as I went back to my table and I sat down, I leaned over to my friend who I was sitting with and I said, I just thought for sure there would be one. And 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 she looked at me and she goes, yeah, she goes, I'm praying for that too. And as I began to say that, the woman sitting to my left, who had rushed in at the very beginning of my message, I was already standing at the front. I saw her walk in and sit down. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, I'm the one. It's me. I was late because I was standing in the hallway on the phone with my husband and his doctor, and we were getting the devastating news that he has early onset dementia. It devastated him so much that he went back up to the hotel room to lay down. And I just didn't know what to do. So I came in here and sat down. And with tears streaming down her eyes, she said, I said, streaming down her cheeks, she said, I just needed so much to hear that there's somebody out there going through this. There's somebody out there that knows the pressure and the fear. And she goes, I don't even know what this looks like, but I already don't feel alone. And I just started to cry. And pretty soon she's crying, I'm crying, and I'm hugging her. And for a few minutes, all we did was just sit quietly, holding on to each other, knowing that we can love, encourage, and support each other. This is what the community of the Caretaker's Journey is all about. So as I close today, I want to ask you the question that I'm going to be asking all my guests at the close of each show. What are you going to do in the next 24 hours to take care of you? It's so critical that we do even the simplest little things to get out of the routine, to find some joy, to take care of ourselves. So what are you going to do? And I would encourage you to go to Instagram. The links are in the show notes, and find me and send me a direct message and tell me, hey, I listened to the podcast, the introductory podcast today, and I want to tell you, this is what I'm going to do in the next 24 hours to take care of me. So what am I going to do? Well, my 5 grandchildren are going to be here any minute, and I am going to go and spend some time with them. They make me laugh. They can be silly, they can be fun, and they give the best hugs. So I'm going to go spend some time with my grandchildren. As we close out the show today, if you want to read more about me and my Caretaker's Journey, the link to my book, Are You Ready to Find Joy When Life Gets Messy, is in the show notes. I also want to invite you to hit follow so you always know when a new show drops. They'll be dropping every Friday. If you know a caretaker, share this with them. Every week, the Caretaker's Journey will be back to have another meaningful conversation. Until next time, it's all about him.